Narasimha Rao, I think I'm glad that you mentioned his name first. There's a lot of credit sometimes goes to Manmohan Singh, his finance minister, but there is no comparison. It was Narasimha Rao who is another Narasimha Rao, and he had a fabulous bureaucrat working under him as principal secretary, Amarnath Verma. That was the combination which did the reform, and we all helped him because he had the whole depth and to understand what would be acceptable to the general public and various states and carried out this.
You were with Indian
Commerce Minister.
Commerce Ministry
I was the
from
executive advisor commerce.
right from 1988. But what suddenly made PV Narasimha Rao take the step and influence you all and the ministries to pass it at that specific moment? There was some kind of emergency situation, as we have heard from the media.
Okay, okay.
Was it true or not? Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, one
since you
was,
saw it from inside.
yeah, we had the problem of balance of payments. That means we had 2 weeks of reserves. Even that I think is overstated because I think we didn't have that. So we were bankrupt. We had to sell gold and then get it back. And we realized at that time India can't remain a closed economy. That means we have to open up to the world so that when we import anything like oil and all, we have to pay for it. There are various ways of paying for it. One is to borrow money, and the other, promote investment, difficult. And the other thing is pay it through exports. That means you're importing a lot, you export a lot, you're okay. You import less, you export less, that's what is happening in India now. You're still okay. And the payment is not in crisis. And reserves are building. But in our days, we are importing far more than exporting. And so we had to develop exports. For exports, what we have to do is to set the thing such that there is demand for Indian products outside. Price and quality, both have to be met. And our entire policies were geared for that. In some sense, if you ask me, can you explain to me what was your export policy? Or, I mean, trade policy? Our trade policy was basically export policy and making the import policy less complicated so that people could import. Without import, the country can't go. So you need the technological knowledge to import through imports. And if you want to do that and expand it, then there's no shortcut to not promoting it. Have I answered your question?
Yeah, I have a better idea, but we don't know the insider story and how you and Mantek Singh Ahluwalia and Manmohan Singh and other people came together, and PV Narasimha Rao supporting you all, and you came up with the fancy policy that changed India forever.
Now, first of all, I wanted to tell you that the entire trade policy statement was written by me in collaboration with others, but of course, written by me. And part of the reason, as I mentioned to you earlier, because I had actually done, apart from being a student of Jagdish Bhagwati, had actually done reforms, trade reforms in Turkey.
In Turkey. How did you end up in Turkey? I'm just curious.
That time I was in the World Bank and I was the main
Oh,
economist. And I did the reforms with the help of the person who later on became the Prime Minister, Turgut Özal. And Turgut Özal was at that time, initially when I met him, was head of the planning and then Deputy Prime Minister. And I did. So that helped me to do reforms. I'll mention what I focused on. I mean we. One was exchange. I said that exchange rate has to be competitive. And I said competitive means I used to check in the morning, first thing I used to come to office, check what is the market rate. That means if you want to, if I have dollars, if I want to sell it, how many rupees will it? And they said X. And I said, what is the exchange rate? It's Y.
so
Why?
so
Y much less than
yeah.
X. So I said, then it has to be close to X. Otherwise, X has to come down or it has to be whatever. So we then developed what I think this was the concept I developed, partial convertibility. The partial convertibility of rupee sort of made it so that we could come closer to the market over a period of time. And as you know that when we did the reform, changeover adjusted twice. So I was closely following the exchange. In fact, so much that people used to call me in my office to find out what is my market rate and our official rate. How does it compare? That is one thing that I. The second thing we did was completely liberalize the import regime. It's so complicated that anybody who wanted to import anything in India basically had to hire 2 or 3 persons to explain to them how to do. Those people were making money. I said it should be very simple. And so we had this whole concept of completely overhauling the import system. Then I said the tariffs, customs duties, where we get a lot of revenues, they're 500% compared to an average of 20 or less than 20 for in the world, the highest in the world, more than I think probably Cuba and other places. I said that has to go drastically. And I made that statement, which came out in the trade policy statement, that within 10 years, India's tariffs will be comparable with the average of the ASEAN tariffs. ASEAN means, the ASEAN society, Southeast Asia. and that is less than 10%. We have not reached that stage even now, unfortunately. Modi has raised tariffs. But tariffs were brought down from 500 to 25, 30, 35 in a few years. A lot of people said if you bring down the tariffs like that, there will be floodgates of imports and we will lose a lot of revenue. I say if these floodgates of imports, then we'll collect more revenues than before. And that's what is exactly. Tariff rationalization was part two. Part three, which is my contribution completely, and I think the economics world in India as well as outside recognize that I realized for doing any kind of trading business in India, there are far too many rules, signatures. So the transaction costs, I call them trade transaction costs, are very high. You require 257 signatures to import something from 30 different agencies. Make 200 copies, which is so time consuming. So I developed this whole idea of trade facilitation. It's extremely important now in the world. And logistics formulation facility. So actually my last piece for the government as a private citizen was the work I did for the Council of Economic Advisor for Modi on logistics and trade facilitation in October 2019. And that report is accepted by the government. A lot of the things have been incorporated. The next aspect which I focused on was ignoring services trade. Not good. That means only India may not only do goods exports, but India can probably do better in services. So that is something which was important. Goods and services. And then the last one, we did that in 1991, was trade agreement. That means we got to have proper trade agreement. So this is sort of the basic crux of the trade policy reform we did. And the other thing which I have added is putting all these things together under global supply chain. That India should be a part, an integral part of the global supply chain, where small and medium industries can play a very active role and bring us, produce parts and components and bring in a lot of exporters. So we shouldn't be just focusing on exporting final goods. I think that should answer you. But of
Thank
course,
you.
as you said, that if we get into a policy, economic reform discussions, all these things will come uh, quite.
In detail. So no, I mean, I was kind of looking for more of a layman's view. I have a curiosity, which is a pretty weird one. Now I'm pretty sure if you want to actually say, for example, you were saying that you used to go to office and check on what was the current exchange rate. So now you will probably have a certain internet access of some kind of a World Bank or some special kind of access over internet for sure, that you can log in and then check it convincingly or conveniently. What was the procedure then to do some kind of quickly changing stuff? I mean, it changes all the time. How would you do then? You would call somebody?
Call.
Call.
If I call now and check it with the internet, there'll be difference.
Hmm.
Calling is the best way, but you
Somebody.
have to know who to call.
Yeah,
The
of course.
hour rate or whatever it's called. So you have got to develop some friendship
Right, right,
so that
of course.
people give you the actual. number. And I think the thing is that, the other thing I wanted to mention, I think this is remarkable. Those days, the dollar shortage, and we had this horrible act, FERA, it was actually signed by Manmohan Singh, whereby people couldn't keep dollars and all that. I remember once I spoke in World Economic Forum, there I mentioned that when I went back to India with my small kids, my daughter, who used to play the piano very well, every time she did well or she did well in class, we used to give her some money and put it in the piggy bank. One day I said that I just broke, the piggy bank just broke and lots of dollars came out. Then I realized I'm violating FERA. As a civil servant, I have so many dollars at home. The whole audience couldn't believe it. I said, this is so stupid. It's rude. And some form of FERA is still there. You know, and that's such a tragedy. We had all kinds of rules imposed related to import and foreign exchange because of the shortage of foreign exchange. But things have lived. We liberalized all that as much as we could. Basically, another thing I forgot to mention is that the strategy always was economic policy or economic policy reform, but here the strategy was outward oriented economic. That means India has to be an integral part of the world economy.
Hmm.
Can't be isolated. Unfortunately, Mr. Modi is making India isolated. We didn't join our CEP. We're not having any kind of role in any bilateral, good, strong bilateral relationship, any developed country or any plurilateral. No, I have to first of all commend you people, this group of people who are doing very marvelous things of
Thank you.
getting opinion of people because we have no axe to grind. I'm not trying to, you can see me that I'm not in a position that I'm looking for jobs or looking for favor or anything. Nothing. So I can speak my mind. I'm pro India. I want India to grow. What is my main worry? My main worry is the potential of India is X and we are only 10% of it. 90% we have lost. How many opportunities did we get for that? Plenty. When did we get those opportunities? Second term of UPA, Narendra Modi. Complete loss. And I think really worries me. So I feel that we are getting, now today there is COVID. And I think Sanjay Baru, who wrote Accidental Prime Minister, the book on Manmohan Singh, Sanjay Baru has edited a book in which I wrote the chapter on trade policy, and that is post-COVID shadow. That means what India can do. I think in some sense I have noticed in life that they say failure is the root of success. That when there is problem, you can get something out of it. So this COVID crisis completely destroyed the global supply chain. That linkage is lost, disconnect. And that can promote local supply chains. And if you have local supply chains in India, we can import high quality stuff from Thailand, Malaysia, Vietnam, and other countries and export it to the world. And that would be a remarkable thing. When I write all those things, people nod their head, they take no action. So I think that is pathetic that people are not taking windows of opportunity. We won't be getting too many windows of opportunity. We don't need a genius to help us. We need common sense. And we don't need economists. Anybody can do it. But when you do it and your hunch tells you that you should do it, consult an economist to see you're making sense. That's what Narasimha Rao did. That's what Bajpayee did. And I think that's important. So that's why what I wrote is that you need economists in the government, but they shouldn't be doing the reforms. The reforms will be done by God knows what subject they have studied. They could have studied chemistry, they could have studied physics. This should be people with common sense. And that's country after country.